Welcome everybody to the Creators Forum. I am so excited to welcome Jamie Geller today. Jamie is known as the Jewish Rachel Ray, according to the New York Times, and the Queen of Kosher, according to CBS. She is a 7-time best-selling author, the founder and CEO of Kosher Network International, which is the #1 global kosher food media company, and the world's most watched Jewish food network with almost 1 billion views. That's a lot, and therefore I have a lot of questions to ask you on so many fronts. I want to first off by giving a karta tov and appreciation to you. And it's funny how things go. When my wife and I were planning on making Aliyah, we were on the fence. We wanted to come, but we didn't know when. And we saw your videos that you produced with Nefesh B'Nefesh, and that literally that put us over. We're like, we would cry watching those videos. You showed your experience in a very raw way. And my wife and I were like, you know what, we got to do this. We got to do this. And it's just so funny that basically now we're neighbors, like literally, and how the world kind of spins around in such a funny way. So I want to thank you for that. And I also want to thank you because I myself am a Baal Tshuva. I grew up in very much the secular world. I wanted to be a rock star. I was attempting that. And a lot of my background's in media. And I know that you also have a background in media. And you obviously have built quite a media company yourself. And so I want to thank you for kind of paving the way for people who are religious, but they can also kind of dance around multiple worlds and try to inspire in many different ways. So I do thank you for that very much.
Well, Dov, it was worth it just for that. Like, it was unbelievable, and it just warms my heart. Thank you so much. I didn't know all of that, and the fact that I could just literally look into your kitchen right now is like
living room,
so
living
much
room.
Fun. Yeah, living room. Right, correct.
Yeah, but yeah, no.
You don't want me to see in your kitchen?
You can come to our kitchen as long as we're all safe and everything. Everybody should be healthy.
Correct.
But my wife would definitely love that. I'd love it too. But yeah, so thank you. To jump right in as a kind of a transition. So your background in media, if you can explain a little bit to the audience, what that was and how it transitioned into this kind of like kosher empire.
Sure. How much time do you have?
As much as you want to give me.
Okay. As you said, you have a lot of questions, so I'll do the abridged version. But like, you wanted to be a rock star, so I grew up, I always wanted to be famous. But I can't sing at all. I cannot carry a tune. The first time I actually sang to my daughter when she was little, she cried. And as soon as she could like speak, she said, "No, mommy, no, stop."
Wow.
So yeah, I have like a very raspy kind of voice. It happens. I lose my voice a lot. And I'm told that singers have a similar like issue with their voice. And so people ask me all the time, like, can you sing? I don't know why that's an indicator, something about the tonality. And I'm like, not at all. So I can't sing. I can't act. I did love dancing, but you can't get too famous just being a dancer. And maybe more so these days with like, I think you can dance in all these shows, but back then, correct, exactly. If I was born 20 years later or 30 years later, I would.
You know what? It's never too late. It's never too late. That would be something. I'm sure it would get a following.
That is so funny. You are right.
I'm not joking. Literally.
I actually think you're right.
Yeah. Check it out.
But I don't think I can do that within the parameters of the religious framework of my life right now. That's the issue. Now that I can actually become famous dancing, I'm not sure I could totally.
Separate channel specifically for women. You never know.
Yeah, totally. Correct. Okay. If I find an extra 5 minutes in my life, right, I should definitely pursue that. But back then it was like, my mom always said she didn't want me to be a chorus girl. Like, she didn't, see the future for that. And so I just thought about, like, how am I going to become famous without having like a lot of the general skills that normally people have? So I decided I'm going to be a broadcast journalist. There were a lot of icons at the time to be inspired by, especially in the female world. So Diane Sawyer, Barbara Walters, Oprah Winfrey, and I could study journalism and also become famous in my own right as I'm interviewing celebrities, politicians, world leaders along the way. So I went to school for broadcast journalism at NYU, and while I was there, you get an internship. So I got one at CNN. Like, that's where you would go, interested in broadcast journalism. Like, definitely, it sounds like a great place to start. And I landed in the entertainment news division. So I actually ended up, while still an intern, while still in college, interviewing every celebrity known to man at the time. So from Beyonce to Eminem, from Gwyneth Paltrow to Michael
What show was this
Douglas.
for?
So the show is called Showbiz Today. It was
Okay.
their entertainment news show. It was live every day at 4:30. I don't know if it subsequently was changed to Showbiz Tonight. I don't know if it's still around these days, but it was like CNN's version of like Access Hollywood or Entertainment Tonight, like those kinds of shows that were popular at the time.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. And I ended up becoming a producer there. And then from there, I moved to HBO and I worked on shows like Sopranos, Sex and the City, Entourage, concerts like Janet Jackson, Madonna, Britney Spears.
And
I
what
also
as a
did.
producer, what was the responsibilities? Because I always see producer, executive producer. Sometimes it's just like, just a name, and they really don't do anything other than say, "All right, that was cool," and now they got executive
Correct.
producer credits. So like,
Correct.
what was your experience as a producer?
Well, I basically worked like a dog after having graduated NYU, and my father wanted to know, after all that he paid, all that tuition, why I was, making about the amount of, like, a night shift manager at McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
I always say everyone wants to get into the field, and so you start as a production assistant, and even as you become an associate producer, it's like the pay is not great. It's so glamorous sounding, but it's the opposite. And yes, there are plenty roles. So certainly executive producer can mean you're footing the bill and you have a say, or it could mean you're sitting back and eating bonbons, or it could mean you're like the quarterback. I always describe that a real producer's working is literally quarterbacking the entire production. So it could be everything from writing to interviewing to project management to work on the set. It was everything. I did everything and anything it took to get the job done. And
Okay.
we worked in the marketing department, and for all those, promoting all those shows, backstage, on set, behind the scenes, at concerts.
So
I did it covered. Yeah.
you went from being in front of the camera, I guess, interviewing, and then going behind the camera as a producer. Was there a reason that you transitioned as opposed to wanting to become or continue in that, I don't know, like a 60 Minutes type person, a Barbara Walters, whatever? Is it what brought you there?
So I always wanted to be in front of the camera, but you don't usually start in front of the camera. So when I was at CNN, even though I was interviewing everyone, I was behind the camera. So what that would mean
Hmm.
is I would do all of the work, right? So not only did I write, and not only did I go on location, so whether I was at the Oscars or the Emmys or the MTV Music Awards or the VH1 Fashion Awards or on set of a particular news show that was just starting production, I would interview with the camera sat next to me, was positioned next to me, and I faced the interview subject. I asked
Gotcha.
all the questions. If I was on a premiere, I would hold my hand out. It would be my hand on the mic. And the on camera talents, the reporters who had been at a million movie premieres and a million award shows that never ever wanted to go to another one in their life, would show up for about 5 minutes to do what's called their stand up, like their on camera piece. They would stand in front of the camera on the red carpet or like on the set of wherever we were, do their 5 minute intro, their 5 minute outro, and then they'd go back home and go to sleep. And I would continue to stay there all night, interviewing everyone. Then we would take all the tapes back and I would log them and I would write the piece. And then they would come in the next day for 5 minutes, go into the voiceover booth and voice over the piece. And then I would sit there and edit the piece. At that time, we used to have proper editors, and I was the producer sitting next to the editor. And we'd put everything together and make what's called a package or a clip that you would see like a news piece. And I did the whole thing, but you never
But
saw me. My mom would always say, yeah, my mom would always say, I saw your hand holding the camera. And the goal was always to work your way up in that manner, and you get certain opportunities to be in front of the camera.
Hmm.
And while I was trying to work my way up, I got a really great offer for a job as a producer at HBO. So I just moved over there, continuing doing the similar things. And then the truth is, when I was eventually tested and eventually had gotten far enough to be on camera talent for HBO, I became religious, was married, was expecting, decided not to have a TV in my house, and thought HBO was not exactly the caliber of programming that I wanted to be associated with. And so I finally had my big shot and I turned it down.
You turned it down for a bigger shot. My background, I'm not quite where you're at yet, but my background is that being that wannabe rock star, I had a band, I was doing all that stuff behind the scenes. But then I basically dropped out of school, and I was like, you know what? I want to, this is in college. I want to be, if I can't get there in front, in the front door, let me try to get in through the back door. So I got a degree doing audio engineering. And from there, I got a job at, not a job, I was an internship at Right Track, which was one of the largest and most successful recording studios in New York City. And my job was, like, you hear all these famous ideas like changing coffee and cleaning tables. When you come in, I literally was on my hands and knees scrubbing the floors with ammonia, and that was my internship.
Wow.
And then and then doing like 60 to 80 hours a week. If you do that enough, then maybe you'll become like an assistant to the engineer and slowly get in there. So I met celebrities, and I have a whole story about getting relatively illegal stuff for a big rapper. And I got in trouble because I didn't bring a receipt at the store, whatever. It was a whole interesting thing. Anyway, I realized I also, at that time, I almost drowned, trying to save somebody's life. It's a whole crazy story. And that's where I started my religious journey, just as I came to this point. And I started thinking, I was like, well, I'm finally in the door, but I have other things that I want to do, and I don't know. And I ended up going to YU and getting smicha and that whole thing, and eventually coming back around.
Rabbi.
Yeah, you don't have to say it so loud. I mean, but yeah, my first gig over here was, I had a Rebbe job at Lev HaTorah, which is a post high school yeshiva. But that eventually went into the world of marketing, transitioned in. So with that being said,
but I love that, from rock star to rabbi.
Yeah, to now marketing guy, video creator. Yeah, it's quite a trip it's been. They're still all in there. They're still all in there, though.
You know what? So I don't mean to interrupt you, but I feel like it's a point worth noting. Once you get to where you dreamed you always wanted to go, you almost more often than not realize, this is not where I want to be. When you're chasing pursuits of that manner, obviously it's not a life lesson. Obviously, if you're chasing truth and Torah, of course, when you get there, you're like, this is so great, I want to just keep elevating. But in the other world, it's like, this
Jimmy,
is what
I'll
wanted.
tell you, in this world, my dream when I became religious was become like a kiruv rabbi. And that was my goal. I thought I was inspired by my rabbis, and I wanted to give back. I still want to give back. Right. And I still hopefully am trying to give back. But my goal was to be a mashgiach ruchani in a post-high school yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. Everybody told me, Dov, you're a Baal Tshuva, you can barely read Hebrew. Like, how are you going to pull this whole thing off? And thank God, through a lot of siyata d'shmaya and a little bit of work on my end, I ended up getting that job as a post-high school Rebbe in Lev HaTorah. I worked in NCSY for a couple of years as a city director. So like I've had my opportunities. Wow. But you're right. The dreams that I had when I was 20, 21 years old, as soon as I hit them when I was 30, 31 years old, all of a sudden I have a wife, I have children, I have bills. I kind of been there, done that. And then I realized that, you know what, maybe I'm a little bit outside of the box. I don't know if you can tell, but I was like, maybe there's a different way to kind of go about it. So I very much resonate with, just because you made a goal and maybe you achieved a certain level of that goal. Yeah. You also change along the way. As a quick Devar Torah, which isn't normal for this channel, but I think it's important.
I was like, it's such a frum show.
Yeah, no, it's not as frum, but it's okay. We're not hiding anything here. A friend of mine told me that Moses, in the beginning, it said God spoke to Moses, and Moses said such and such. At the end, in Devarim, it says that, and I told you, Moshe starts talking about, when I commanded you to do this. So what happened, what my friend told me, I think it was from one of the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, he's like, do you notice that he changed how he spoke? In the beginning, it was all, God spoke to Moses and Moses said such. At the end, it was, he was saying I, but not Moses commanding them. He was saying through God's perspective. And he said what happened is that Moses was also growing in the desert. Moses also spent his life, at least those 40 years, improving, becoming a better person. And by the end, he was such a clean vessel that the message kind of just came in and out. And so that idea of the person that you were when you started, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're a growth-oriented person, in your career, You want to continue to grow and progress. And it doesn't matter what level of success you get. Like if you look at somebody like Warren Buffett, one of the most wealthy people in the entire world, he drives a decent car and he still lives in a house that he bought 50 years ago. And he's like, it's not about the money. I don't, it's nice to have money. It's good. It's opportunity. But he's like, it's about the journey and the passion. And I like helping businesses grow and I like making investments. That's what it's about. And so, that's something that I've learned a lot. And I'm sure as you're saying, you've learned that as well.
I did, but it's so inspiring the way that you just gave the, and the story of Moshe, because you never think about it on that level as well. Obviously, everyone's striving for growth, but think about it down here, and so it's incredible that at all levels we can always be striving, growing, and changing.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking about striving, growing, and changing, what was the transition? I know you said that you were a producer and you got to the point in the secular world, of getting where you wanted. Now, all of a sudden, you're a religious mother. How did you now transition to kind of this kosher world and building yourself up through that? Because it seems like, I don't know if people knew you at the time from that. So what's the transition?
Yeah. So, well, a few things. First of all, I got married and my husband said, "What's for dinner?" And I said, "I don't know, you tell me." Like, what do you want from me? Like I use my oven for storage in Manhattan. Like I never turned the thing on. And so from that perspective, he loves the kitchen. He taught me how to cook. To this day, I think he cooks more than me. He's like always my sous chef, always prepping and working with me and everything. And I had a funny story of learning how to cook that first year of marriage together with him. Simultaneously, in parallel to that, I moved out of the city. I get married. I'm in Far Rockaway. It's an hour and a half commute door to door to go to HBO in the city, and 3 hours a day out of my life when I now have a husband and we're expecting our first baby. And we've decided to live a more religious lifestyle, which meant like I don't have a TV in my house yet. I'm working. It wasn't like I was working for like some kids channel. Like if I was working for the Cartoon Network, I feel like maybe I would not have left, although the cartoons can be pretty racy these days too. But certainly then HBO was one of those like push the envelope types of programming and content. Of
It was
course
one
it
of
is
those
now, but
scrambled channels back then.
yeah. So it was just kind of like so not in keeping with not what I wanted to be. I remember like my unborn baby was like hearing like all the stuff that I was producing. And we actually asked the Shyla of David Feinstein, who recently passed away, to say like, should I quit? What should I do? Like, and he said, stay there until you go on to maternity leave, because we told him we're saving money. We're trying to buy a house for a young family. It's a good job. Most people don't get this job. How could you leave it? Like it was such a struggle. And then he said, stay there until you go on maternity leave and then figure out what you want to do. So I'm on maternity leave and my husband's like, you know what? Like you kind of learned how to cook this year. Like you're pretty good. Like you should write a cookbook after like all of my horrific, embarrassing, like crazy kitchen experiences. And I'm like, you know what? That's such a nice idea. Let me write a cookbook. So I'm on maternity leave and my baby's like practicing tummy time next to me. I just start typing. I start typing my story, how I was the bride who knew nothing, how I knew nothing about religion. I knew nothing about cooking. And I write this whole book. And I'm like, wait, he said cookbook. I need recipes too. Like I just had written my personal story. So then I went in and added recipes and I called up a publisher, a local Jewish publisher, Feldheim. I called up Art Scroll at the time. And at that time, they had an exclusive with another cookbook author. They weren't doing any other cookbooks. So they said, no, thank you. We have an exclusive deal with one cookbook author. So then I called up Feldheim, the next one, biggest publisher, the second one. And I said, I tried a little different tactic and I said, I'm a producer at HBO because I was still on maternity leave. Technically, I was still a producer. And I have an idea for a book. Like, come right in, like it's not every day you get that pitch. Yeah. And then I got there and I told them the story and they fell in love with it and they agreed to publish it. And that's how I got into like the food side.
So then, and how did you end up promoting it and growing your own personal brand? It's something I'm very, very, very interested in. I previously, about 2 years ago now, I had a volunteer position, internship with Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if another Jewish guy. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, Gary V is like, no, never heard of him. Who is he?
There's a lot of people who still haven't. There's also a lot of people who are,
What?
very hardcore on
And
one side or
I
the
knew
other.
about him when he was just doing the wine stuff before he's the Gary
Wow.
Vee of today.
Wow.
Yeah, because from the food, from the wine, someone's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you should watch this guy. He does cool wine stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, he's really
So,
good.
so you'll
Maybe he'll make
appreciate this.
something of himself one day.
Yeah, you'll appreciate this. When I started working at a local nonprofit, Lamana Chai, from my buddy
Yeah.
Tom Eisenman. So Tom,
Tom, I know. I'm like, this is the rabbi, the guy Tom told me about.
yeah.
Totally. He's been talking to me about you.
Oh, nice, nice. I love Tom. Tom is great. He's come up in a lot of
Good people.
areas of my life. And so when I was transitioning out of the world of rabbi into the world of marketing, or I didn't even know what to do. I literally spent 10 years of my life building this rabbinical career and outreach and everything, whatever. And now I'm like, where am I going? What am I doing? This is what I think I'm good at. And he's like, well, my father-in-law has a nonprofit. Why don't you interview for a position over there? Okay. So anyway, I started getting in there as a community relations director, of community relations and development, something like that. And as I'm going through it, I was part of the rebranding and trying to elevate it's a wonderful organization, but we wanted to get more
Yes,
people to hear about it, more people
of
inspired about
course.
it. And so Tom just mentioned, he's like, oh, there's this guy, Gary Vaynerchuk. You should check him out. He's like, he does marketing and this and that. He's quite a personality. And I literally fell in love with everything that he was presenting in the micro content model. And like, I studied it for years. And eventually I was able to kind of work my way into helping Team Gary Vee produce content. I was producing their content for their French channel, but I was working with the team. And
Wow.
yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. Literally,
Cool.
I was working with all of his brand peoples. And then I ended up speaking to him for like 20 minutes on one of his shows. It was a cool thing. It was a cool thing, but not even sure where they said, oh, branding. But he's all about building a personal brand, and everybody needs to build a personal brand. So that's a long way for me to ask you, what was the process that you went about building your personal brand? Because you've done a fantastic job doing it.
Thank you. I'm happy to share the process, but I don't even know how relevant it is today because building a brand today is so different than it was 13 years ago. And I want to even say almost 16 years ago, because my book,
just digitizing it, just digitizing the process.
Correct. Okay, I guess so. So let's see if we agree with that. We'll share it and then we can
I'll try
analyze.
to bring it down. Yeah.
Yeah, we can analyze, right? So we need the Gemara cup for that. So no one knew about me and I'm writing this cookbook. How are we going to get it to fly off the shelves?
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I did, which I didn't know it was called at the time, but content marketing. I went to my local newspaper, the Five Towns Jewish Times, and I said to them, I'd like to start writing a column for you. You don't even have to pay me. I just want you to I just want to get my name out there. So the column started as Secrets of the 15-Minute Chef. And every week I'd write a column, I'd write a personal story. Again, almost had nothing to do with cooking. And then somehow the recipe was weaved in at the end. But it was bringing you in with the personality and the story and getting to know my family and my husband. And I called him a hubby. And, people would stop us in the street. I became like a local celebrity in my 5 blocks, where it's like, I read the comment, oh, hubby. So, this is before all of that,
Yeah.
And I eventually changed it, I think, to call From the Bride Who Knew Nothing. And then that's when I named the first book. That's when I decided I was going to name the first cookbook Quick and Kosher Recipes from the Bride Who Knew Nothing. So as soon as I had my title, then I changed Secrets of the 15-Minute Chef, which was originally how I pitched my book. And I changed the column to The Bride Who Knew Nothing to sort of bring in that, that element of what I'm marketing and branding that I was building. And so that started. Then when the book came out, the publisher only wanted to publish, I think, less than 10,000 copies or about 10,000 copies because I was like a newbie. And the book came out mid-November for Hanukkah. And by Hanukkah, you couldn't get a copy. There wasn't a copy on the shelf. It had sold out. And now the book is in its 7th printing. And it's been translated to Hebrew. But it was that content marketing of that article writing and that notoriety, while I was building it up. But, the book, the first printing sold out.
Was that not article, but was that column in other newspapers, other publications, or was it just the Five Towns?
Smarty pants. Yeah. So then I went syndicated. Then I went to the Jewish Press. And
This
then
is
from
before
there,
it
it
came
was
out, before the book came
yes,
out?
yes, yeah,
Because I'm
yeah.
wondering, 10,000, I'm sure everybody in the 5 towns bought that book from whatever Judaica stores over there. But, you know, I'm just doing a little bit of math and marketing and
Yes,
trying to figure out, it must have
yeah.
been, you know, was it, I'm sure they sent it to LA and to Miami and to New
Yeah,
York.
I'm trying to think now. I'm pulling it out to see if
Because
it
I'm
says
originally from
here that I
Teaneck, so like we
syndicated.
got Jewish, we got Judaica stores in
Yeah.
Teaneck too.
So by this time, I'm actually reading the inside of the book to remember what I did before the printing. So over that time, I went into the Jewish press. I started a cooking show with the OU. So all of that before the book came out in anticipation of like the pre-marketing for the book.
That's
So yeah,
awesome.
it wasn't just from, although I have a lot of hakaras at for the 5 towns Jewish Times for giving me my start.
Okay.
But
Okay. Great. Great.
yeah.
So you sold out because of all this content marketing. Um, there wasn't any direct sales. Did they? I mean, maybe it's going too granular, but did they like sell it to the stores and then the stores bought them and then you recouped? It was just kind of.
Oh, you want to know how the book industry works?
I mean, that's not the biggest goal of
Yeah.
this right now, but I'm just trying to, you know, when it says 10,000, was it you put it out and then 10,000 people bought it, or it was like you inspired all these stores, let's say 100 stores, to each buy whatever 1,000 books? Probably not the math, but you know, was it that? Was it more of like a B2B or like a B2C type situation?
Well, the stores took their orders, it's an order. So the bigger chains will order 100 or 200, and the smallest ones, because you're going all over the world. They distribute even to Australia and South Africa. Some of those will take 6 or 10 copies. I mean,
Yeah.
really, that's how small an order could be.
Yeah.
All told, it was 10,000, and all told, you could not buy it. There was not one left on the shelf in time for Hanukkah.
That's amazing. So,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes people think it's the book, that makes them into a celebrity or leads to the success. But here it's actually the success and the content marketing that really helps with what I do. But the content marketing is what drove people to buy the book.
Well, think about it now. Like now, there's not a publisher in the world, and probably this goes for the music industry as well, that will green light any project, any book, any album, unless you have some level of following,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah. No,
That's what it is. You
100%.
have to come to the table with the market. And
Yeah.
so that wasn't a prerequisite at the time, but that's what I, in effect, did. I created a market, I created a name, I created a brand, I created notoriety, I created like a story, like style. So
Did you do all that
I
for
created the
free?
audience.
You were talking
Yep.
about, I mean, you mentioned
Yep.
the art, everything you did for free to build your brand, and then you were able to monetize it afterwards.
Not only that, and maybe by the time I did the OU cooking show, maybe there was a nominal payment that was like, at the end of this, like building and building, but nominal, if anything. I invested. We were supposed to go on a honeymoon. I said, honey, we're not going on a honeymoon. And I put that money into like whatever our wedding money and all of like, the things that I thought I wanted, like for putting down for a house, I put it into the brand. I got the best photographer at the time. I used one of the it's another fun story. The editor-in-chief of the 5 Towns Jewish Times, I told him I'm looking for a photographer for my book. I don't want like a Jewish photographer. I want like, I came from HBO. I wanted like production value,
Mm-hmm.
And so he says to me, my daughter is an agent at a New York photography agency. She represents the best of the best. Go to her. Her name now, I don't know if you'll know her, is Malky. She has a site called Malky Hirschman. Kiss the Kosher Cook is her like social media handle. She left that world, got married and left that world and has become like a food personality on social media in her own right. So Kiss the Kosher Cook. But so shout out to Malky. But she at that time was working in like an agency in New York, and she got me the best food stylist. She represented makeup artists, photographers, food stylists, like the whole department for a major agency in the editorial space. So best food stylist and best photographer, and I paid them, out of my own pocket because the publisher didn't believe in me, and they were like, we'll publish your book, but we're not giving you this big budget to, create it. And I invested a lot.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that's a massive, on one hand, leap of faith, but on the other hand, investment and belief in yourself and what you're offering. So now let's kind of jump to, um, you're now building your brand, but it seems like it's been like supercharged. Like what have you done, I guess, since the content marketing? I know you're still doing it, but I guess now I want to know, like, how it seems like it's systematic now. You have so much
Yeah.
content coming out in so many different ways. Like, how do you go about it, kind of from a top down approach?
Right. So, I mean, when I realized, I started touring when the book came out, and going and literally hugging every person that would buy the book, and signing every copy, and just really, it was exhausting, and it was such a hard, difficult pace. And by the time the book came out, I had my third child and the book on the same exact day. And with it, like, I think before the bris, that was my first son, I was already on TV in Philadelphia. Like, I did a press tour, I did signing tours. It was a really, really intense time.
You reached
It was
out for all
difficult.
those gigs, or did they
Yeah,
reach out to you?
I paid for my own publicist, and I reached out to them. And I thought, okay, when are we going to be able to get a kosher cookbook author on any kind of TV show? Well, the only time is going to be around Hanukkah, Rosh Hashanah, Passover. It doesn't make sense to pitch them, in the middle of February. And so that's where we went. And we went after these like peak periods that we thought where the mainstream press would pay attention to a niche, vertical, a niche piece of niche content. And so we did that. Everything was very like with a great strategy and great thought, and like I said, great investment. And the publisher had their own publicist, and they went out to the Jewish press. But I'm like, that's not enough. We got to go out to mainstream. We have to story. I hired the best publicist, and on and on and on it goes. But so eventually, it became very hard to scale that and to sustain, touring and especially the family. And so we went online, and that was the beginning of like, have your own website. It was before even a blog. Like, I just had a website, I didn't have a blog,
Yeah.
and that's when it started to get supercharged. Once you had the ability to scale in a way that the in-person model will never allow, then you create videos that, millions or hundreds of millions of people could see. You create content, whatever you write. Now I didn't need anymore to be in the, although it's still valuable. It's so valuable, but like, think about like the articles reaching X amount of people versus the content marketing in the digital space. It's very, very different. Now the whole model is like different and changed, but that, and it just once I took it online, it just
I mean, the model's not really the fundamental and the core is all the same. It's all about, it starts off with
correct.
giving the value, which for free, and your own time investment and potentially your own financial investment, and to reach out, and you got to hustle. And if you don't have a publicist, I mean, if you're able to, I mean, what I've heard from a lot of people is the first time that you have a little bit of money, as you're saying, always reinvest into it. Most
Correct.
people, they get a little bit of money and now they spend it because they're like, I have some breathing room, but it's just like,
Totally.
no, keep on reinvesting, hire the best
Yeah.
people in the field, make yourself look the best, have a PR
Correct.
people to make sure that they reach out. I mean, it makes a lot of
Correct.
sense. Niche down
Correct.
into something that
Yeah.
is you, but it's also, you can amplify it. But yes, social is, you're all doing the same thing, but now instead of making a phone call per se, which you can do, you make an email. Or now instead of
Yeah.
doing an article in the 5 Town Jewish Times or whatever it is, you put your blog post out, or you do a video series, or
Right.
it's all the same thing. But it's just, I guess, in many ways, it seems that when you're writing an article for a newspaper, it's not everybody writes articles. It's kind of like a select thing, like, but online, when you're building a brand online, every single person in the entire world, oh, I think we're frozen again. Oh,
Yeah. We're back.
yeah. And online, every person in the entire world can have a social media page. You can have an Instagram, you can have so how does one go about? I mean, you had momentum to kind of keep pushing you. So,
Correct.
and those numbers, they call it vanity metrics in many ways, because I mean, it could be fake. There's a lot of people who pay for a following and it's not a real following.
Right.
But at the same time, when you do have a real following, it does a lot, and it does a lot more. But how do you continue to grow and push when it becomes such like a crowded market?
It's so hard. I want to go back to the point that you made about vanity metrics. what you need to be looking at, anyone who knows what they're looking at knows that they're looking at engagement rates. You're really not looking at the total numbers. The total numbers are impressive, yes, but the bottom line is it's all about the engagement rate. So that, in terms of metrics, that's really what you need to be focusing on anytime you really want to evaluate the, influence, efficacy, or actual reach of any particular brand. As it relates to someone starting out, that's the difference. Like when I started, if you want to have a website, you have to someone like build it for you. It's like, and now like anyone can almost make their own website with a WordPress theme, and anyone can have your own, social media page. And there's every time that there's a new platform, the algorithm really favors organically pushing that. So like, here's an example. Right now, it'd be very hard to start a Facebook page, very hard from scratch. Pretty hard to probably start a YouTube channel from scratch now. Not impossible, but hard to like get that momentum. And Instagram also, it's hard. But you go onto TikTok, you could be a superstar overnight. The algorithm is not, it's working to the advantage of, anyone who just pops in, like based on the video. It's a completely different metric. It doesn't mean you don't try those other spaces. It doesn't mean there can have growth. But you do the same thing anytime you go on any of these platforms, the same thing we spoke about. It's content marketing. They call it now collaboration. You offer, you tag, you share, you do for you, I do for me, I scratch my back, you scratch yours. You find the other pages and accounts and influencers that have the audience that you're looking for. I saw literally Instagram Reels is a great example of this. So they just rolled out this new, right, correct. So there's one influence, I don't want to call her influencer, one food account that I was following. And I just said, this girl is a talent. She's amazing. She had 5,000 followers, but I identified her content as being so above and so unreal and so amazing. And she'd been at it for a few years, and she had a great engagement rate, really, really great, but 5,000 followers. And that was less than 3 months ago. She now has almost 150,000 followers. Because number one, she leveraged Reels. The second Reels came out, she jumped on it right away, and the algorithm favored that. So she was like a first adapter, and those first adopters get like, a lot of credit. That helped her just grow exponentially. Second is she went out and reached out to small people like me, and we did some collaborations. Then she did, like, I'm saying small because now she's doing the New York Times. Now she's doing films for them, food films for them. Now she's doing Food 52. If you know the food industry at all, Food 52 is one of the top food, media brands out there. It's like on the level of New York Times. It's like unbelievable. So she started collaboration. She started content marketing on a small scale. She jumped on a new technology, opportunity, and she started then, moved into collaboration in a bigger place, and she blew up in 3 months. Like, it's unheard of to do. But now with Reels, a lot of accounts are flying.
Well, it's interesting. You said, she blew up in 3 months, but we both know 3 months isn't really 3 months. It's actually years and years and years and years to kind of figure it out and work, and what works, what doesn't work, so we all get that, but it could be moment.
I always say every overnight success is, 10 years in the making.
Yeah, it really is. There was a guy, they call him Dogface on TikTok or whatever. He's a guy with the cranberry juice. You see that guy, right? So people are like,
who didn't see that guy?
It was entertaining. But if you dig, I was like, who is this guy? He looks like some Hispanic thugged out dude. And I looked at him because I'm like, what? He put out one video? No, I scrolled through his stuff. He's been doing this for God knows how long on TikTok.
Yes.
And then finally, and he's been doing similar things. He's been dancing. He's
like, why that one? Why that one?
Hashgacha pratis. There's a lot of.
I always say Hashem.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. There's not.
Which is funny to think Hashem is like smiling on that particular piece of content and that particular person, but it's Hashem. It's unbelievable.
We don't know the math. We don't know the divine math, but apparently it works. Yeah. All right. So I want to finish up because I know you got to go. But here's I think the most important question that I ask. And who is your greatest professional influence? I mean, I can say influence in general, but who is your greatest professional influence that really changed the trajectory of your life?
Well, who's yours? You go first.
Professional? I mentioned him. It's Gary Vaynerchuk.
Gary Vee's your.
Yeah, because it changed my idea of what marketing is, and it made me fall in love with business and marketing. That perspective, I never had it before.
So then, in that case, I would say Martha Stewart or Oprah Winfrey. And the reason I'm giving two is because I didn't want to just pigeonhole it into a food space. So what I love about them is they took a talent of being in front of the camera, but turned it into, both of them, into a media empire. And that is what that entrepreneurial, that chachma, that's what attracts me. And that's what excites me, like completely, totally, and completely.
That's amazing. That's amazing. All right, Jamie, I can ask you another 100,000 questions, but maybe we'll have to leave it for another time. So thank you so much.
Part two coming soon to a theater near you.
Yeah, seriously. So thank you so much. I appreciate it for me and my audience, and thanks.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. If I would have known it was so much fun, I would have carved out 10 hours.
All right, the next time.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much.
All right, take care. All the best.